It's really a pleasure to see so many people in this room, also your colleagues and representatives from political groups. I'm really glad to see so many people who show an interest in this, as far as we are concerned, very important item. The topic we are going to discuss today is really very important and is also a topic with a lot of, let's say, difficulties that especially women did suffer in war and times of chaos, under repressive regimes in many countries in this world. So we face a very sad item in the whole history of mankind. But I think it's important to discuss that and to bring it here on the agenda of the European Parliament.
It is a personal tragedy that nowadays forced marriages are on the rise in the camps of Syrian refugees due to economic destitution of the families of the brides.
I'm very proud to introduce to you is Madame Gloria Antiba Davis. She is the victim expert of the Office of the Prosecutor of the International Court of Justice, a criminal court, and she directs the Gender and Children Unit, which focuses on sexual violence and crimes against children. And I've understood that you are a refugee yourself. You have quite a history already before you came to what you do now. But it's really wonderful to see you have had such a career that you can now tell us about your work and maybe also about your personal experiences, if you would like to.
Let me first of all express the gratitude of Mrs. Fatou Bensouda, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court in The Hague, for inviting her to address you on the subject, the role of the justice system in preventing the exploitation of women through forced marriage, conversion, and rape. The prosecutor and her office most certainly appreciate the cooperation and the regular exchanges with the EU, including the European Parliament. Bringing to justice and ending impunity for sexual violence crimes, under which forced marriage, conversion, and rape can be categorized, has gained momentum in the international community in recent times. Upon taking office in June 2012, one of the principal goals Prosecutor Bensouda set for the office was to ensure that we pay particular attention to sexual and gender-based crimes in carrying out our mandate under the Rome Statute. The prosecutor made a commitment to enhance the integration of a gender perspective in all areas of our work and has on various occasions since her election in 2011 expressed her desire to pay particular attention to the investigation and prosecution of sexual and gender-based crimes and to enhance access to justice through the International Court for victims of these crimes.
So I'm really honored that you are here with us, Mr. Nilam Hussain. You are the Executive Coordinator at the Ashima Women's Resource and Publication Center in Lahore in Pakistan. And we are very pleased that you came over to us. We know the situation in Pakistan is very difficult at the moment. And I'm sure you can inform us about what's going on in your country and the work you're doing there.
The examples are in 1997, 3 sisters aged 15, 13 and 11 were given in custody to Muslim neighbors by the local magistrate instead of their parents on the pretext that conversion to Islam after their parents had of their conversion to Islam. Therefore, they couldn't be sent back to their parents, which is, violative of every kind of human right and emotion. Then in 003, a 6-year-old Sikh girl was kidnapped by members of the Afridi tribe in the Khyber area. The tribe reported that the minor had converted to Islam and thus could not be returned to the parents. The government failed to recover the girl. I mean, the government doesn't have, there's not much writ in the Khyber in any case. Then the other case is of a Hindu girl converted to Islam in Mirpur Khas, Sindh. She was renamed Maryam by her abductor husband. The court validated the marriage on the statement of consent, ignoring both circumstances and motives. The police refused a meeting between the girl and her parents. Then later, 3 Hindu sisters, aged 21, 19, and 17, were kidnapped from their house in Karachi. The parents registered a case against neighborhood boys, who were primary suspects. The latter were arrested but released a few days later. The parents believed that the girls had been forced to convert. The Supreme Court ordered the police to provide security to the girls, but they were not sent back to their parents, but sent to a women's shelter. Now, this is a problematic issue, as cases of abduction and forced marriage of non-Muslim girls does two things. It is abduction to start with. Then it is a violation of the right to religion and belief. And most of them are young girls. And it is forced marriage. But it also muddies the water for genuine cross-religion marriages, which do take place.
I'm just wondering about how international diplomacy could help bring about a sufficiently solid system where you've got rule of law.
Foreign diplomacy, international diplomacy can be helpful, but this is something that we have to do ourselves. Reliance on someone else can be counterproductive. The change has to come from within, and certainly not through the military. It has to come through democratic channels.
I will now pass on the floor to Madame Tiffany Maran. She is working for the European Centre of Law and Justice. You are the, let's say, legal advisor for the centre, and you're doing a lot of work for the centre towards other institutions, such as the European institutions.
Sexual violence, when used as a weapon of war, fundamentally threatens international peace and security and requires an international and judicial response. For the women and girls of Syria, many have found themselves vulnerable on 2 fronts. First, in their home country, as the civil war now marks its 3rd anniversary, and second, as refugees in foreign lands exposed to desperate conditions that lack adequate security structures and resources. I was pleased that the European Parliament issued a resolution earlier in February encouraging that the Syrian women be a part of the discussions, that they be brought to the table and be a part of the solution as we go forward in discussing a comprehensive disembarment and demobilization and hopefully a reintegration process in the near future. Additionally, the European Union can actively pursue mechanisms to replace a culture of impunity with a culture of deterrence and accountability under the law. The European Union has a role to play. In the ongoing talks, we should be encouraging both sides, the pro-government forces and the oppositional forces, to take a public stand, incurring deterrence to protect women and children, and profess that any member of their forces caught violating the dignity of a woman be held accountable. As for the refugees, the European Parliament and the European Union, including the member states, have dedicated a large amount of resources. But the common theme that I have heard from those working on the ground with the refugees is that the money is not reaching the most vulnerable. I would encourage the European Parliament and its member states to tailor its money, working directly with the host countries and as much as possible with the local governments to ensure that the donors' money is used in the best manner to reach the most vulnerable refugees. And lastly, I would encourage the European Parliament and the member states to increase resettlement and humanitarian admission pledges, specifically for victims of sexual and gender-based violence. At present, the countries neighboring Syria are bearing the majority of this burden. And as the UNHCR has set a goal of 30,000 places for Syrian refugees on resettlement, at present, just over 50% have been promised. As of today, less than half of the European Union's 28 member states have committed to providing any places for resettlement or temporary humanitarian admission. Thank you.
I would now like to hand over the floor to an old well-known friend, Mr. Jean Maher, who is always very active in the Coptic society. And it's really a pleasure once more to see and to hear you, especially about what's going on in Egypt. So you have the floor.
One of the radical Islamists' horrible means is the kidnapping of Coptic women and minor girls. Women kidnapped, drugged, raped, converted by force to Islam, forced to marry and prevented forever to see her family again. Slavery. Few girls have succeeded to escape, and they tell their horrible experience. As an example, Angie Adel, witnessing in a circulating video, in Arabic-speaking video on the net. Angie was 12 when she was kidnapped. Today, she's 18, out of Egypt, but she counted 2 years ago. I went out from school and was followed by some young people. They pushed me in a taxi and used a vaporizer, so I lost conscience and woke up to find myself in an apartment. A lady with 2 other girls introduced me to a man named Sultan. He took me in a room, tied my arms on my back, and raped me. 4 other men raped me, one after one. Each one seemed to have the desire to cut my body in pieces, as if I was his enemy and hates me. For 1 month I was beaten and had a lot of blue marks. I was unable to eat, drink, or sleep. All they wanted was to give me drugs and rape me. For 2 consecutive days, 5 men stayed in the room and raped me. I was awake, unable to sleep 24 hours a day. She went on the video crying. More than 50 men during this month have raped me. Then my father succeeded in finding me and I came back home. The police security asked me to come for interrogation. The officer only beat me so hard with his feet in my stomach and my back, pulled me from my hair and treated me as a street girl. They wanted to force me to say that I left my family by my own will and nothing of these stories happened. We will say to the Egyptian government that unless Copts and Coptic women and girls are protected, Egypt will not be strong, will not be stable, and will not be a successful democracy with the rule of law. Thank you.